All right, it being just after 1 o'clock, looks like we have enough for a quorum. We'll go ahead and get the TAC Funding and Programming meeting of May 18th started. First, I wanted to introduce Bradley Bobbitt. He's a senior planner with the Met Council, and he will be taking over duties from Bethany. So maybe Bradley, if I could just hand it over to you, if you want to maybe tell us a little bit about yourself and some background.
Sure thing. Can y'all hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So yeah, hi, my name is Bradley. Fairly new with the Met Council, started at the end of February. Before that, I was with Rochester Public Transit as a service planner, project manager. And before that, I spent 8 years with Washington State DOT. Grew up in the Twin Cities originally, got my master's degree in planning at the Humphrey. So happy to be working with y'all.
All right. Thank you, Bradley. Good to have you on board as our staff liaison. Okay. Approval of the agenda. Do any members have any changes to the agenda as proposed? Okay. Seeing none, we will move on to approval of the April 20th minutes. We'll need a motion and second and a vote on this. Any discussion on the minutes?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
this is Paul Lakeville. Just, I move approval, just a note of clarification. I don't believe I'm the vice chair, as indicated on the member present, list. So I believe that should be Carl. So just wanted to make a note of that.
Okay, yeah, thanks for that correction, Paul. Yeah, I roped Carl into that position. Thank you for pointing that out. So we'll make sure that portion of the minutes gets corrected. Any other changes? Okay, do we have a motion?
I move approval. This is Paul.
Okay, we got Paul Omi moves approval. Do we have a second?
This is Carl Keel. I second.
Okay, our vice chair, Carl Keel, second.
Yes, and thank you, Paul, for clarifying that.
We can't let Carl off of his official duties. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those vote by roll call. Bradley?
Thank you, Chair. Anoka County, Jerry Oji.
Yeah, I'm gonna abstain.
Q. Carver County, Angie Stinson.
Darren Milky, I'm sitting in for Angie today. I might abstain too because I didn't attend the last meeting.
Okay, thank you. Dakota County, Gina Minico.
Aye.
Hennepin County, Jason Piper.
Aye.
Ramsey County, Scott Merrick.
Aye.
Scott County, Adam Jensen.
Aye.
Washington County, Maddie Delheimer.
Aye.
Tab Coordinator, Elaine Kotsukos.
Aye.
Met Council MTS, Cole Hineker.
Aye.
Metro Transit, Scott Chinowiak.
Aye.
MnDOT Metro District, Aaron Tagg.
Aye.
MnDOT State Aid, Colleen Brown.
Aye.
MPCA, Innocent AO. Okay, I'll move on unless I don't see if Innocent's on. MnDOT Bike and Ped, Mackenzie Turner Bargain. Right, DNR, Nancy Spooner Walsh.
I abstain. I wasn't here for the last meeting.
Abstain. Okay, thank you. Suburban Transit, is that Heidi?
Aye.
Bloomington, Carl Keel.
I'll abstain too since I wasn't there.
Lakeville, Paul.
Aye.
Eden Prairie, Robert Ellis.
Abstain.
Fridley, Jim Kozlucher,
I'll abstain as well. I wasn't present.
Maple Grove, Ken Ashfeld,
Aye.
Plymouth, Bill Thompson,
Aye.
Minneapolis Engineering, Nathan Koster.
Katie White sitting in for Nathan today and also last month, so I'll vote aye.
Sorry, everyone, I'm being new. I just want to make sure. So Katie, are you the new member or are you alternate still?
Nathan is on staggered parental leave. I'm subbing in occasionally, but not permanently.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you. And then St. Paul Engineering, Ann Weber.
Aye.
Chair motion passes.
Okay, thank you, Bradley. All right, next we will move on to public comment on committee business. Bradley, did we receive anyone from the public or anyone wishing to speak to our agenda today?
Chair, we did not.
Okay, we'll move on to the TAB report. I'll turn it over to Elaine.
Thank you, Chair. TAB met yesterday with an almost 3-hour meeting, so it was very long. The Chair reported that he attended a May 8th meeting of U.S. Conference of Mayors, and they discussed changes of transit with the use increasing during the midday is what they're finding. From MnDOT report, Michael Barnes reported that the Metro TZD workshop had over 100 participants, and MnDOT has 20 years of efforts with the TZD. To date, there were 88 fatalities on the roads in Minnesota, with 28 in the metro area. For the MPCA, Frank Kolash reported that MPCA received a $3 million planning grant from the Inflation Reduction Act to access funding through EPA for implementation projects. Solicitations from the EPA are expected to open in early 24. The Metropolitan Council received $1 million for a planning grant for the metro area. And then tribal governments will also be accessing funding. The MAC report, Kyle Crimmins reported that airline seats are up 15% over last year and are at 90% of the pre-pandemic level. 22 new domestic routes have started. And at the St. Paul Airport, the flood wall was removed and runways are at their standard length. For the Metropolitan Council report, Deb Barbeau reported the groundbreaking for the B-Line BRT, which will replace Route 21. Construction will be completed and service operational in 2024. Tours were provided to federal officials on the Blue Line and Green Lines. And Barber also requested that TAB members complete the TPP survey by May 24th. For the Suburban Transit Association, Gary Hansen reported that for the suburban providers through March, the monthly motor vehicle sales tax receipts are overperforming, with projection on average by 11.6%. From a revenue standpoint, it is good news. The suburban providers are working on improving efficiencies by working together. For example, a vehicle parts sharing arrangement, as well as knowledge sharing for vehicle types. MVTA quarterly ridership is up 42% over a year ago, and they're reviewing lower performance service routes to change to microtransit. Southwest Transit on-demand partnership with Lyft has completed 175 rides so far in the last couple months. They are budgeted for 1,200 rides. Plymouth is preparing for a service change at the end of May, which includes reducing express service and reallocating to microtransit. For business items, TAB approved the 2 streamlined tip amendments that went through TAC. One is for new projects. One was a MnDOT project added for traffic study consultant services, and the other was 17 projects that had been selected through the regional solicitation in 2022 for projects that have a program year of 2024. With the tip not being, for the next tip not being approved till November, and the funds available in July, they didn't want to have any delay on those projects. The other streamlined tip amendment was a fare collection equipment cost increase for a Metro Transit project. The scope change for Hennepin County CSAH 153 was approved. They also approved and released the Highway Safety Improvement Program. They approved the tip for release, and then for the regional solicitation, they approved all the items that came through funding and programming and TAC. Without going through each one of them in detail, they approved everything as it came through TAC, with one exception. They did make an edit to the unique funding application to add language to clarify what the project significance for the region should be, and then change the scoring from 5 points to 9 points for a bit bigger spread. So that was all the items. And then they released that for public comment, and that should be posted tomorrow on the website and a notice going out. That's what I have.
Okay, thank you, Elaine. Any questions for Elaine? Okay, hearing none, we will move on. Thanks again, Elaine. First business item today is program year change request for Highway 252 projects. I will turn this over to Steve Peterson for a background report.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. We do have the applicants also with us here, and maybe when I'm done with my report, we can see if they'd like to add anything. So the first two action items are on the same topic area of program year extension. Again, TAB's policy is that you can have a 1 year, one-time program year extension. We did bring this issue to TAB executive, and that's later on in the action item. And I think the conclusion there was, one of the conclusions was that the TAB, probably starting at this committee, is going to have to reopen that policy. The policy was written for kind of a standalone project, but what we're seeing more and more with the regional solicitation are projects that are tied to larger projects. And a few examples are being some of our ABRT projects, this one 252, Gold Line, last go around, Southwest LRT, and probably more in the future here as we keep building out some of these larger projects, particularly transit projects. So I think there is a need later this summer to reopen that policy, which again says a one-time 1 year extension can be granted for program extension. So the applicants in this case, Brooklyn Center, Brooklyn Park, Hennepin County, and MnDOT are jointly requesting that we shift, in this case, 4 projects from program year 2026 to 2029. And so these 4 projects all relate to the Highway 252 corridor in Brooklyn Center and Brooklyn Park. And the reason for the delay, and you maybe remember this as we talked about this a couple years ago, they were funded independently through the regional solicitation, but then back in 2018, MnDOT funded the Corridors of Commerce project. Met Council applied for this project, in fact, so thanks, Met Council. But what happened was it tied these 4 different projects all into one project. And so, excuse me, the project partners cannot build individually their project any longer. And the decision was made also to do an environmental impact statement. Again, that's the highest level environmental review. And in the body of the text, you can see some of the things that they've done there that have been really unique. Now getting into an equity and health assessment reports, they've just produced the 3rd of that nature to get more input, particularly from overburdened populations, et cetera. So collectively, the request here is to take those 4 projects and shift them from 2026 to 2029. We would like a recommendation from this body as to how to proceed on that, if you'd like to approve that or not. We've also, as you go, Bradley, maybe if you could just scroll down to the table 2. What I also think would be helpful for TAB and their decision making is help in developing this pros and cons table of approving it. So we've started this out and put some different pros and cons for why you would want to approve or not approve this. And I won't maybe read all of them for you here today, but did want you, we can leave it up on the screen here, and as you kind of think about it, if there's other things that come to mind, either you want to change the language that's written here or add additional things, I think that would be another addition that the technical committees could make. So I do see one question, Mr. Chair. I don't know if you want to go to it now or later.
I'll wait until you're done, and then we'll have the applicants say anything, and then we'll open it up for questions.
Gotcha. So with that, I think I will turn it over to the applicants. I did see a few of them online here to see if they want to add anything about the request. And again, the letter that they all co-signed is included with the packet as well. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you, Steve. Okay, I will open it up to any of the applicants wishing to speak.
Chair Thompson, I guess Jesse Struve, City of Brooklyn Park.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is kind of a unique situation. Again, it's all our, while we applied for these grants individually, it has become into a much larger project that's going to have regional implications, and therefore, some of the delays that have happened are kind of outside of the city's controls on that. And so we do, I guess, respectfully request that be extended as well. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Jesse. All right, any other applicants? And you don't have to say anything if you don't want to. I'll just maybe give you another few seconds if any other applicants want to speak.
I do see Carla from Hennepin County raised her hand, Mr. Chair.
Okay, yeah, I can't see that. Thanks for pointing that out. Carla, sorry about that.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair, thank you. Carla Stevie with Hennepin County. Really appreciate the presentation, Steve, and the additional comments, Jesse. Just wanted to really highlight kind of the complex, intertwined nature of the projects, the regional significance of the projects, really the sensitivity in completing the very extensive environmental review, and the benefits of tying the projects together. So appreciate the consideration for this. And I also just wanted to highlight that this, the 252 corridor and this project is a very high priority in terms of safety improvements. So the project will really improve safety and mobility along the corridor by reducing fatal and severe crashes along Highway 252 and I-94, and really enhance walkability and bikeability along and across Highway 252 and I-94, and support reliable transit service. So thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you, Carla. Appreciate the comments. All right, and I see Katie White and Elizabeth Heyman with raised hands.
Liz is an applicant. She can go first.
Okay, Liz.
Thanks, Katie. Liz Heyman, City of Brooklyn Center. I think Jesse and Carla covered it really well, but just wanted to let everyone know that all the applicants are kind of standing together here with that same perspective of the regional importance and the safety considerations for the corridor. So thanks for the time and for considering this change.
All right, thank you, Liz. Okay, now we will go to Katie and then Scott after Katie. Katie?
Yeah, where Bradley has it right down on the page, I'm glad he kept it here. In the cons column, it says there's a risk that the environmental process does not select the location or project elements described in the regional solicitation applications. I wonder if the proposed remedy to that would be then, like a different kind of scope change or another amendment. I mean, I don't see it as in opposition to permitting it now. I'm just saying, like, it's something that this project would have to go through later. I mean, there's a lot of environmental left to do, and so I don't want this fear of the unknown to hold up project elements like this when they just might be more appropriate, in another format. I'm not sure if that's really a con. It's just something that should be noted, but maybe not in that column.
Yeah, and I think, Steve, your point there was if we approve this, we could get to the point where maybe none of these projects are relevant because the EIS has different recommendations. So then we're just not using the funding at all. But yeah, thank you for that comment, Katie. I understand what you're saying there. Absolutely.
So, Mr. Chair, just so I understand what the request from Member White was she'd prefer to remove that as a con because that's maybe every environmental process could have that same risk factor, or perhaps reword it. Was that the request?
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, Scott.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to confirm with Steve. I guess my assumption would be that if this is ultimately approved, that the void of these projects moving from 26 to 29 would be backfilled with over programming projects. And I just wanted to make sure that we have an adequate amount of projects that could slip into the this 2026 funding time slot.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair and members. Great question. Something that's top of mind for me always is what's the impact to the overall program. We are currently over programmed by quite a bit in 2026, and if we approve both of these program year extensions, both this one and the Blue Line extension, the net result would be we'd have $3.7 million available in 2026 to put towards additional projects, either in the short term or with the next regional solicitation cycle. So even though it looks like a big sum of money, 26 million, it made me a little nervous at first too. But once we looked at the program, it turns out we can manage through that, and it's not an issue in my mind.
All right, thanks, Steve. Scott, did that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
All right, Katie, your hand is back up.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I've been on this project now for about 4 years representing the city of Minneapolis. 252 isn't in Minneapolis. We're not an applicant on this request, but what happens on 252 does impact what happens in Minneapolis. We're supportive of this request today. 252 is an incredibly dangerous road that needs significant investments and improvements. And I think that the more detailed EIS that we're underway on right now is incredibly important. So we're supportive of this to give the project the time it needs to come up with a good outcome for the users and for the community.
Okay, thank you, Katie. Carl.
So as I recall, when we implemented this policy, we were having issues with applicants actually delivering projects, and then kind of the subsequent programming problems that we would have with moving monies around from one year to another. And it doesn't seem that that's the issue here at all. And I wonder if we ought to be at least mentioned someplace that the intent of the policy was as much to do with accountability for applicants as anything. And we always ask questions about, well, how far are they along? And we don't want to give them an extension if they haven't done anything in the last year. So I presume that these projects are moving expeditiously, and it's not an issue. This is not an issue at all about delivery. It's rather about coordinating activities up the corridor. Is that true?
Steve, do you want to take that?
Yeah, sure. And I'll let the applicant too add on if I miss something. Yeah, I think that's a true statement, Carl, that they're making significant progress on it. But, we don't do environmental impact statements very often. It's only for our big, most important projects or potential for largest impact. And so it's likely the right decision to slow down the process and do this. But time is what you lose as part of it. You gain a lot of things through more public input, looking at the impacts of different alternatives, but you do lose time and being the council is also involved with this project just on some of the committees, and they're making good progress is I guess what I'll say, but the EIS process traditionally is not a quick one on purpose.
Yeah, so I think just somewhere in the report, we ought to acknowledge that the intent of the policy was first to make sure applicants were delivering or making progress. So we should note someplace that progress is moving, you know, on track. It's not an issue that these projects are being delayed because we weren't getting our work done. And secondly, it was to try to handle the programming things. And your comment back to Scott was that, you know, the programming is manageable within the system.
Yep. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Carl. All right, Jim Kozluchar.
Hi, thanks, Mr. Chair. So I guess I would just add on to Carl's comments. I think they're appropriate. I think perhaps the 1 year limitation on extension didn't conceive of such large projects that, you know, they aren't able to be steered, you know, within that year. So it might be just arbitrary for a project, for projects of this size, that there's a 1 year limitation. But I would say that there might be another reason for limitation on extensions, and that was related to MnDOT's ability to appropriately staff, you know, and, you know, put forth resources to move these projects around. And, you know, kind of, you know, I know, you know, having Colleen's team and the moving target is, you know, makes it difficult for them. So I don't know if maybe Colleen can weigh in on that, on this particular you know, change. I'm presuming, you know, there may be some support there because this is a, you know, there's a MnDOT project in here as well. So.
All right. Yeah, thank you, Jim. Colleen, it sounds like Jim volunteered you to get involved in the conversation if you'd like.
I don't really have anything to add. We're okay with the move as long as the program can be balanced in a not a simple way, but as long as we can balance the program. That's our biggest challenge when projects move, is filling the holes and finding place for the funds to go to. And I think Steve said that he has that all ironed out. So I think we're good.
Okay, thank you for that input. Do we have anyone else wishing to speak? Doesn't look like that we have any more speakers, but yeah, I'd tag on to Carl and a handful of other folks that, yeah, this is a regional project. We want to make sure that it's holistically coordinated. You know, these really don't have independent utility. I mean, it's a system and they all need to work together. So I know a handful of these projects have already had the 1 year extension, and you know, this is a unique circumstance. So making sure to document that if this moves forward very clearly, that this is a unique situation warranting of such a approval or exception. Right, seeing there are no other speakers, we do need an official vote on this, so we'll need a motion and a second.
Mr. Chair, this is Carl Keel with Bloomington, and I would move to approve this extension.
All right, thank you, Carl. Carl moves. Do we have a second?
Maddie Dahlheim. Oh, go ahead.
Chair, this is Jason from Hennepin County. I second.
All right, Jason from Hennepin County seconds. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor or opposed, vote by roll call. Bradley?
Thank you, Chair. Anoka County, Jerry OJ.
Aye.
Thank you. Carver County, was it Jack? Or did we have Angie on?
Darren Milky, aye.
Okay. Sorry, I'm just taking notes as I go here. Dakota County, Gina Medico.
Aye.
Hennepin County, Jason Piper.
Aye.
Thank you. Ramsey County, Scott Merrick.
Aye.
Scott County, Adam Jessen.
Aye.
Washington County, Maddie Dahlheimer.
Aye.
Tab Coordinator, Elaine Kotsukos.
Aye.
Met Council MTS, Cole Henniker.
Aye.
Metro Transit, Scott Janowiak.
Aye.
MnDOT Metro District, Aaron Tagg.
Aye.
MnDOT State Aid, Colleen Brown.
Aye.
You. And MPCA, Innocent AO. Innocent, were you able to join us? I think that is a no. MnDOT Bike and Ped, Mackenzie Turner Bargan. Okay. DNR, Nancy Spooner Walsh.
Aye.
You. Suburban Transit, Heidi Scholl.
Aye.
Bloomington, Carl Keel.
Aye.
Lakeville, Paul Omi.
Aye.
Eden Prairie, Robert Ellis.
Aye.
Fridley, Jim Coates Lucher.
Aye.
Maple Grove, Ken Ashfield.
Aye.
Plymouth, Michael Thompson.
Aye.
And Minneapolis Engineering, Katie White.
Aye.
And St. Paul Engineering, Ian Weber.
Aye.
Chair motion passes.
Okay, thank you, Bradley. And this passes. And so we have our next item on the agenda is also a program year change. This is Brooklyn Park's CSAH 103 reconstruction. So just like the last item, Steve, maybe I'll turn it over to you, and then the applicant can jump in and say a few words.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Lots going on in Brooklyn Park these days. So this is a request from the city of Brooklyn Park, looking at the letter that they sent in, also signed by Hennepin County. But the request is to shift one of the roadway projects from 25 to 2026 to better align with Blue Line light rail transit extension. Again, Blue Line extension goes from downtown Minneapolis northward to Brooklyn Park. And you probably followed some of the happenings on that project, where they're particularly in the southern half of the project looking for a different alignment because they weren't negotiations with the railroad fell through about using co-locating on the railroad line. So there's 3 projects that are related to Blue Line extension that the city of Brooklyn Park has. 2 of the 3 are already in 2026. This is the last one, and they're requesting to, again, move it to 2026. So all 3 projects are in 2026, which we think is the best year for Blue Line construction. This is perhaps the most important of the 3 projects, though, because this roadway project, beyond reconstructing the roadway, is also doing the final grading for the LRT, which will run down the center of said roadway. So really tying Blue Line extension and this are extremely tied together and need to happen at the same time, just because they're doing the final grading for the LRT, which is going down the center of the roadway again. So just like the last action item, we did put together a pros and cons list. Table 2, Bradley will kind of get to that here. Thinking about the questions we had last time, we can manage. This is a $7 million shift from 25 to 26, so we do believe we can manage this in the overall program. And actually, it kind of works out quite well because we just shifted a bunch of money out of 2026, so this would shift a little bit back into it. So from a programming perspective, this does work out. But again, we're looking for that pros and cons list and for a recommendation from you. So with that, Mr. Chair, I'll turn it back to you and see if the applicant would like to say anything. Thanks.
All right. And I assume, Jesse, are you speaking on this item?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, Jesse Stroop, city engineer for Brooklyn Park. I get to talk again and make a very similar request as the last one. Again, this project's tied in with a much larger project, and obviously it's a much better situation to have it all happen at one time versus us coming in, or us and Hennepin County coming in and doing this work and then having LRT following closely behind and disturbing a lot of the work that was already done. So I guess we would just respectfully ask that this get moved forward into 2026 with our other 2 projects as well as aligns with the LRT. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Jesse. And for those that maybe don't have all the details that you and Hennepin County have on the Blue Line project, could you or somebody just maybe give us a 2-minute update on where that process is in terms of, you know, approval or moving forward towards construction?
Yeah, I don't know if Stephen wants to take this one, or if I mean, I can talk on behalf of Met Council, I guess, but
Yeah, I can try, unless, let me just give you the high level here, and Cole Henniker too, a transit expert from our staff's the member here, but the Blue Line extension is currently working. This is I'm reading it from page 2 here. Working through the supplemental environmental impact statement process with the draft expected this fall, final document anticipated for 2024. As I understand it, this summer, there's going to be a recommendation for what to do for that southern part of the alignment. But this is up north in Brooklyn Park, so the alignment's not going to shift for this northerly part where this roadway project is kind of co-locating with the LRT line. But what they're really working on at this point is what's the alignment through North Minneapolis that best kind of suits the needs of the area. So I think that's where we're at. Cole, anything to add there?
Nope, nothing to add.
Okay. I'm a transit planner, I guess.
All right, thank you for that, Steve. I do not see any hands up. Anyone wishing to speak?
Mr. Chair, this is Carl. Question on these in the past, didn't we have a little score sheet that talked about project progress? You had to get 7 points or something like that in order to be recommended for approval? Or am I thinking of something different?
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. We do have a score sheet. This one has already requested an extension, so we didn't go through the score sheet process. That's usually something that Colleen and State Aid will do for the project. I'm not sure if Jesse has a good pulse on kind of how they're progressing on the design and aspects of this project. He'd probably be the best to answer that one.
yeah, Mr. Chair, I mean, the design through Brooklyn Park is pretty much set. I mean, there's a small deviation from side running on 81 to the middle running of 81. So that's the only real design change, at least at this point, through Brooklyn Park. Again, they are working through the road alignments through Minneapolis and going through a lot of the public outreach. And I believe they have a preferred route chosen right now, or at least selected. But yeah, we're finishing up the draft environmental, or not the draft, the supplemental to the environmental that was already done to account for the new route alignment. But it you know, in terms of the overall design of the project, I would say, you know, 70% of it is completed, with that 30% that needs to kind of start over through Minneapolis, that where the route change is basically done.
So again, the purpose of that spreadsheet was to demonstrate that the project is moving ahead reasonably, and I'm hearing that it is. And really the delay here has to do with other changed conditions, not the slow progress of this project. So I would support that.
All right, thanks, Carl. Yeah, there is a common theme here. Jesse's involved with all of these.
I will say that I'm not, while I overview the plans, I don't think my comments are the ones that are slowing it down. But yes, I am a universal cog in both these requests, I guess.
No, I was just joking with you, but yeah, thanks, Jesse. All right, so thank you for those comments, Carl. It looks like we have Colleen Brown, and then we'll go to Scott Merrick after that.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I have a question about the funding. So if this is moving from 25 to 26, is the funding moving to 26 also, or is that moving outside of the current TIP?
Steve?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair and members. I think the money would also shift from 25 to 26, given that we now have money available in 2026. And so, yeah, your question is usually you kind of go to the back of the queue, unless there's earlier year funding, which can be paid off. And we did not, you were copied on the email. We did ask other people if they did want to move forward into 2026 and did not get any takers on other projects, existing projects that want to do so. So I think that would mean that Brooklyn Park would slot into 2026 versus going back to an out year.
Okay, thank you. I didn't know if you got any responses on that.
No, I haven't.
Okay, so basically, okay, yep. And let's see here, we have Scott.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chair. I'm going to support this amendment. I guess I'm just going to throw out a suggestion for future reference from a program management perspective. When we consider regional solicitation projects that are tied in some way to a larger project, such as the Blue Line or the Trunk Highway 252 project, that we somehow recognize in the application, somehow in the scoring process, that there's a potential project development risk in delivering that project because of its association with a larger, more complex project. And that's not to say that we wouldn't fund the project, but I think it should be recognized as a risk to project delivery. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a great comment, Scott. Yeah, in the risk management area, maybe there's a checkbox for, if a project has independent utility or if it's dependent upon other regional projects. Yeah, something like that in the risk management category, just like working with railroads or other entities, even if it is a singular project, or there are risks associated with that and are scored as such. So I assume that'll be something we can look at when we do our whole overhaul of the solicitation for the fix. Colleen, your hand is still up.
Oops, sorry about that. I didn't take it down.
Okay, no problem. Elaine.
Yeah, this did come up during discussion of last solicitation changes. And one of the things that, especially with the first action we took with the projects that were all independently submitted, it became an issue after the projects were submitted and a Corridors of Commerce project was funded. And then those projects then became tied to that project. So there was no way of knowing ahead of time that there would be any risk to those projects moving. And so based on that, we didn't make any changes to the solicitation, because you don't know until after, if a project's funded and then later gets tied to a project. That was an unforeseen change. With this one right here, if it was applied for with the Blue Line project coming forward, there was some thought that there could be a delay or something like that. But with the previous one, we had no idea, and the applicant would not have known necessarily either.
Yeah, great point, Elaine. So it's perhaps a combination of project application and then also policy adjustment, because yes, of course, some of these things come up after the fact. But thank you for pointing that out. All right, anything additional, Elaine?
Nope.
Okay, we will also need a vote on this item, so we'll need a motion in a second.
Mr. Chair, this is Scott Merrick from Ramsey County. I move to approve.
All right, thank you, Scott. Scott moves. Do we have a second?
Amy White, second.
All right, Amy White seconds from Minneapolis. Any further discussion? Excuse me, Katie White. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote yes or no via roll call. Bradley?
Thank you, Chair. Anoka County, Jerry OJ.
Aye.
Carver County, Darren Melby.
Aye.
Dakota County, Gina Minico. I think Gina had to take off. Is someone else from Dakota County on? No, okay. Hennepin County, Jason.
Aye.
Ramsey County, Scott Merrick.
Aye.
Scott County, Adam Jessen.
Aye.
Washington County, Maddie Dahlheimer.
Aye.
Tab Coordinator, Elaine Kotsukos.
Aye.
Thank you. Met Council MTS, Cole Hineker.
Aye.
Metro Transit, Scott Janowiak.
Aye.
MnDOT Metro District, Aaron Tagg.
Aye.
MnDOT State Aid, Colleen Brown.
Aye.
DNR, Nancy Spooner Walsh.
Aye.
Suburban Transit, Heidi Scholl.
Aye.
You. Bloomington, Carl Keel.
Aye.
Lakefield, Paul Omi.
Aye.
Eden Prairie, Robert Ellis.
Aye.
Ridley, Jim Kozlucher.
Aye.
Maple Grove, Ken Ashfeld.
Aye.
Plymouth, Michael Thompson.
Aye.
Minneapolis Engineering, Katie White.
Aye.
And St. Paul Engineering, Ann Weber. And I'm sorry if you were speaking, I missed that. Let's see, signed off. Either way, motion passes.
Okay. Thank you, Bradley. And then, all right, thank you to our applicants for taking some time to attend the meeting today. And the next stop for these items is TAC. And I know staff is keeping you kind of apprised of the dates, and then this will go to TAB. But thanks again for taking the time to be here to answer questions and present on the project. With that, we will move on to the next item, which is promoting resilient operations for transformative, efficient, and cost-saving transportation. So the Protect funding. So Steve, I'll turn this over to you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. If we could go to the PowerPoint, Bradley, if you have that up. That'd be best. So we did, yep. We did bring this as an information item back a few months ago here. Today is an action item on this new federal funding source called Protect. It stands for Promoting Resilient Operations for Transformative, Efficient, and Cost-Saving Transportation. It's meant to improve I'm getting a little feedback from somebody there. The resiliency of the system so if we go to the next slide here. We do have Brian Shackleton from MnDOT Central Office with us as well. If he's leading the statewide effort, program management for the Protect funding. And so if you have specific questions on Protect and eligibility, he'll be able to answer those here today. So thanks, Brian, for joining us. But MnDOT early this year decided to give a portion of the formula funds that come to the state. So states are given Protect money. And in this case, MnDOT went with its traditional kind of splitting of the federal funds that come to the state as giving 30% of the Protect funds to the Met Council as one of the ATPs for the state. So next slide, please. So we have, you may remember this from last time, we have a few different kind of buckets of time that we're dealing with. And similar to carbon reduction was another brand new funding program. We had all this money that we had to spend right away. And then we had other money that we were going to spend later on. As we kind of developed had more time for other planning efforts to take place and to really think through the best use of this new funding program. So that's a similar case for Protect here. So the first year of money that we had was 2024. What we did with those, given the timeline, and we talked about this last time at FMP, was we put that money on existing projects that could take it. So mix to match STP money with Protect. Again, the one difference of Protect that's unique is that you can only apply it to eligible elements within larger projects. You can't just say one part of the project, you got $100,000 that's eligible for Protect and we can fund a $15 million project. That's not the way Protect works. It's more stringent than that. It wants to focus in on those resiliency elements within a larger project. So 2024 is kind of taken care of. Today, the action item focuses on 2025, 2026, and 2027. So collectively, that's $14.5 million. Allocating that money will catch us up to the rest of the STP and CMAQ money. So you'll see in the next little bit of the chart there, we'll put 2028 and 2029 into the 24 regional solicitation cycle, and then after that point, it'll be kind of attached to the solicitation in a more thoughtful way. So next slide. So what are some of those elements that we've worked with Brian to identify that are eligible for Protect? And we've noted some of those here: stormwater, ponding, erosion, landscaping, retaining walls, a bridge over floodplain area, roadway realignments that take a roadway out of a floodplain. Excuse me, those are some of the eligible elements. Next slide. So we did put together, I'll say, two options for you. The second option has two subparts. So the first option, and we talked about this last time, we could use the Protect money like we did with 2024, mix and match it with STP money on existing projects that you've already selected in the regional solicitation, thereby paying down over programming and freeing up money in the later years, essentially. So you can see the first row on here is the overall regional solicitation balance by those funding years. So 2025, we're over programmed by 11 million, 2026, 15 million, 2027, 19 million and change. So if we follow the same approach as 2024, you can see the amounts for Protect there, and you can see what we'd be left with. So that was the option we presented to you. Next slide, please. But given that you just recommended the 2 program year shifts, that makes option 1 less viable of an option, because we don't have over programming to pay down. We just shifted all this money out of those years. So next slide. And this is shown at the bottom here. So in 2025, if you just pay down over programming, you'd be left with $2 million of surplus. In 2025, we don't want that. It's coming up quick. And in 2026, you'd be left with $8 million of surplus that you'd have to spend. We don't want that either. So we need spending in those years via this Protect program. So option 1 doesn't look as good as it used to. Next slide. Option 2 is to use the Protect money in those 3 years and look back at the last solicitation and look at unfunded projects. So what we did, we looked in every application category, roadway, within roadways, transit, and bike ped, all 12 application categories. We looked at the next unfunded project on each of those lists across every category. 3 of those 12 application categories, when we looked at the project type and what they were doing, had elements that were Protect eligible. So you can see the 3 projects here. So the next unfunded project from the 2022 solicitation and spot mobility safety was a Hennepin County project. They had storm sewer that they were going to upgrade as part of the project. And so they had eligible protect projects or costs. The next strategic capacity project, Carver County project, they were raising the project via a bridge out of the floodplain and reconnecting aquatic habitats. And in this case, all of their federal request is protect eligible. And the last project, roadway reconstruction, the next unfunded project from the last cycle was a Washington County project, which was realigning a roadway out of the floodplain. Again, all $7 million of that, larger project would be protect eligible. In both the last two cases, the projects are much bigger, and that's why you can find enough protect eligible elements within those rather large projects. Okay, so again, 14.5 million available. These project requests add up to $18.6 million. Okay, next slide. So here, this is where perhaps we want to focus in on a group. So again, protect 14.5 million available. Given that the program year extensions are approved, you do have a choice as to what to do with some additional money. So by moving all of that 252 money out of 2026, and this was Scott's question during the first action item, that left $3.7 million available in 2026 that you could spend on projects. So with what to do with that $3.7 million, we look back at the tab policy for reallocation. For future year money, it says you could do a couple things. One, push it to the next solicitation, which we could do. Number two, try and move up projects in any way possible that could take that money. So we emailed all of the 2027 projects and said, would you like 2026 dollars? We may have additional money available if this gets approved. So far, we have not had any people that want to move forward to take that $3.7 million. Option three is to mix and match the protect and this $3.7 million of protect to fund these projects. So if you start adding up the dollars, you could fully fund. You could use the $14.5 million of protect plus this $3.7 million, and now you could fully fund all three of those projects: Hennepin County, Carver County, and Washington County with the available funds. So that's perhaps the key question is, what do you want to do with that $3.7 million? If you want to push it to the next solicitation, then we're back to 14.5 million, and we can't fund. If you go back one slide here, Bradley, maybe. We can't fund all of these requests in their entirety. So then you'd have to make some decisions. Do you want to partially fund some of them, fund one or more of them, etc. But if you do want to mix and match with STP dollars, then we can fund these three that you see on the screen here. So that's really the question at hand. And in doing so, we did want to also note that does change the modal balance slightly by 1 to 2 percentage points in favor of roadways. I know people are always interested in the modal balance here relative to the last 2022 regional solicitation. So with that, Mr. Chair, I don't know if you're back yet or if I'm turning it to Carl, but we do want to take questions again. If you have specific questions on eligibility or what have you, Brian is here as well to help answer those. So thank you.
Perhaps Michael's not quite back yet, so I'll just take the reins for a moment. This is Carl. So do we have any questions? Oh, Michael's back. Michael, you have the con.
Okay, sorry about that. So it sounds like, Steve, you just wrapped up the presentation and we're up for questions.
That is correct. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, we went through the presentation and talked about if I could just sum it up quick. With the movement of the 252 money, especially option 1, paying down over programming isn't a good option any longer.
Yep.
So now option 2 is presented to you, and if you go to the next slide here, Bradley, what we're asking of the committee is you can either pick some number of those 3 projects and spend 14.5 million of protect on them, or you could mix 3.7 million of STP with the protect money and fund all 3 of those projects, fully fund their requests. So that's the topic at hand here.
Okay, great. Thank you, Steve. Carl and then Jason.
So in our policy for how we're dealing with extra monies, could you kind of run through that again? Isn't our first priority to try to move it to a solicitation? I think that kind of the concept behind there is that we wanted to make sure we were spending the monies on projects that were picked. That's why I'm kind of wondering about bringing 3 new projects in that weren't picked.
Yeah, so this would was attached to the action item, Mr. Chair and members. And so this is the future year funding, and I don't know if Bradley can pull that up or not, but or else I can.
Sorry, what did you want me to pull up? Which thing?
Yeah. One of the attachments was the federal funds reallocation policy.
Just a moment.
If not, I can do it. So it says options include putting the funds in a future tab solicitation. If not, consider it options 1 through 3 from above, which is essentially moving projects forward that have already been selected. And Carl, what I had mentioned before is we didn't find any projects that could move forward, or going back to the last solicitation and finding a project that could be delivered within the required time frame.
But could the first option, didn't I hear you say we could put it in a future solicitation?
Yes.
And in our policy, our reallocation policy, I think these were kind of in ranked order of preference, right?
Yeah, go to the next page there, Bradley. Second paragraph, first priority for use of future funds will be to include the funds in a future tab solicitation. When not possible, consider moving projects forward essentially, and then select an unfunded project from the most recent solicitation. So usually in cases like this, future year policies, where you have more flexibility, we try to bring options to the group, and that's why we brought brought this as an option.
But to be clear, if we're to follow this policy, we would move these monies to a future solicitation.
That would be my reading of the second paragraph.
Thank you.
All right, Jason.
Thanks, Chair. So when the materials came out, I was kind of surprised to see the county's stop mobility and safety project on the list. The topic is protect, advancing green streets, stormwater, and the county's project is basically an intersection redesign to address like a known safety problem involving certain crash types. And so for Hennepin County's perspective, maybe not a misuse of protect funds, but it's probably not maximizing their benefit as it relates to stormwater. So, within Hennepin County, I don't think I'm supportive of having the county getting added a project through this mechanism. So at least the funds associated with the county's project, I think our preference would be to have those be available for the next solicitation for 2024, 2023, however you want to call it.
All right, and was that the $200,000?
Yes, and I think it gets a little complicated since the previous motions, I think, freed up some general STP funds. So I think there is a potential for that award amount to increase. However, in either scenario, I think Hennepin County's preference for that spot mobility and safety project it would not be awarded through this mechanism.
Okay, is that because you don't want it federalized, or what's or you're out of the kindness of your heart, you want to give money back?
More that we're currently developing our CIP that's due in a few weeks. And, essentially we had the understanding this was an unfunded project. And then also, Mr. Thompson, we've been talking with the city of Plymouth and we've been learning about some other city priorities. So I want to recognize that. And we want to maximize both city and county funds to make sure we're addressing our top priorities first.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you for that comment, Jason. And then next we have, I think it was Maddie Dahlheimer.
Yeah, I just had a follow-up. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just had a follow-up question to Carl's comments, being somewhat new to this group. So the way the policy is written, the first priority use, these funds would be used for future solicitation, if possible. What reason would that not be possible, right? It says like when not possible, then we can do these other options. What are the things that would make it not possible for us? Right, like if we go to TAB and say, we're going to use this we're going to fund these other projects, we know the policy says this, what is the reason that we use to say it is not possible to move this money to a future solicitation?
Yeah, I think I get your question. So Mr. Chair and members, usually it's a timing issue. And so in this case, we are getting a little tight on timing. So the next solicitation will not be approved until program year 2025. So again, it's kind of July, August of 2025 once it hits the council. So this is 2026 money, so the next program year. And so that does limit the opportunities for projects that could take it and develop a federal project in that amount of time. So that's the constraining factor, I think, that you need to consider is whether, whether there's enough time to develop a new federal project in 1 year's time. Sometimes we do kind of creative things like parking in a transit project or other things to buy some flexibility in there, but I think that would be my take on it. Elaine maybe has something too.
I was just questioning when you said 2025, so it'd be 2025 funding, correct?
2026. Yeah.
Yeah, that was where I was questioning. The next solicitation would be funding projects selected summer 2024, not 25.
Yeah, but it's a tab selection in July of 2024, which would be program year 2025.
That was my question. Was it 25? Yeah. And would this be funding that would be available to trails and like sidewalk, smaller projects? It could possibly go quicker.
Yep.
Okay.
Steve, maybe, let's see. Okay, Darren Milkey.
Yeah, I guess my question is just related to the recent conversation here. For the Protect funding itself, wasn't that fiscal year 25, 26, and 27?
Yes. Yeah.
So you do need to allocate a portion, the 5-6 million for fiscal year 25 as well.
Yeah, so Mr. Chair, let me maybe clarify something here. So when we brought up the policy, that was in relation to just the $3.7 million of SDP. I do think we should make some selections on the Protect money because of the rigidity of the eligibility there. It's unlikely that it'd be difficult to find projects that could be delivered quickly and have the focus that's required for Protect in that year. And so in that sense, I think the 14.5 million would be good to select now. The 3.7 million you could do now or later.
Does that answer your question, Darren?
Yeah, I mean that funding source in particular is fairly rigid, that you couldn't wait for the next regional solicitation to get projects prepared and ready. I guess, could an option be if Hennepin County is not ready to go with their project, could you fund the other two with the combo of Protect plus this additional regular funding was made available as of today?
Yes. So Mr. Chair, oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just thinking, yes, I mean, I think we would just take out the $200,000, so you'd be using $200,000 less out of the STP money, right? And it's just a combination, Steve?
Yeah, I think if you go back to that once, Bradley, maybe if we can flip back to the PowerPoint. Making you work on your first meeting here.
Yeah, I guess I should add, it would be the 14.5 million plus another 2.5 million of the extra SDP funding, I guess.
Yes.
You wouldn't have to fund the 1.62 million for Hennepin County.
Yeah, so in that case, you'd use 2.5 million of STP. You'd push on 1.2 million to the next solicitation is, I think, what the math would work out if I'm doing it right here.
Question, Steve. So I think at one of the last meetings, the Washington County project, only a very small portion qualified for Protect, but now it looks like the entire project does. Did you touch on that at all?
No, I didn't, Mr. Chair. So at the TAC meeting, what was requested of staff is that we're forming our basis for how much of the eligibility costs was based on the application, the solicitation, which perhaps didn't categorize things exactly perfectly for Protect and its eligibility. So the request that we had from TAC was to go back to each of the project sponsors and ask them, here's the eligibility. So we sent them all the details on Protect eligibility, and they categorized their cost accordingly. In this case, since they are realigning a roadway out of a floodplain, they did have significantly more eligible costs than we originally thought, based on how they grouped it. You know, they had grouped their costs in their spreadsheet as roadway.
Okay, yeah, no, thank you for that clarification. I remember Lissa Leitner had wanted to at least provide some more background on that, and it sounds like that happened. So Maddie, do you have something to add to that?
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chair. Yeah, so Steve, yeah, thank you for allowing us to submit a memo. So we submitted a memo and looked at the requirements for the Protect funding, and kind of like, right to Steve's point, the line items in the regional solicitation don't necessarily align with the Protect items. So we kind of went back to how we had created those numbers to tease out what items were eligible in Protect. And as Steve mentioned, I mean, it adds up to over 7 million of our project cost, but doesn't necessarily read that way in the regional solicitation application with those very broad funding, or like very broad cost categories.
Okay, thank you for that background. It looks, we'll go to Jim Kozluchar, Carl Keel. So Jim, you first.
Mr. Chair, Steve, is there practical to go to the, kind of the awarded group for the 2022 solicitation, just kind of overall, and allow agencies themselves to apply for what they believe would be Protect elements within their project, or potential add-on elements that could enhance their project resiliency? Because I think that's the goal of the Protect funding. I'm just wondering, could there be like a real brief, I don't know, submittal of that kind of information, and go through a selection process that would meet the criteria of the policy and a little bit more fully? And then like if Hennepin County chose not to, they could not submit.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair and members. I think that's an option, to set up a special solicitation to do so. I think given that time constraints we're under, being 2025 is the first year here and we need projects, that might be a little difficult to do. A few things are in play here, and I kind of get the gist of your question, I think, is so for the next solicitation, the plan is to add it on to existing projects. But then as part of the regional solicitation evaluation, Brian will be helping us, but by that time, MnDOT will have a statewide resiliency plan done, just like carbon reduction. They'll have a resiliency plan. And one of the scope items that the consultant will start on in the near future is what's the best approach from a solicitation standpoint to use this protect money to best meet the intent of the federal program. So it might end up being exactly what you're saying, Jim, is either add-ons to projects, or we might get a bunch of projects now that people have time to think about it that are realigning roadways out of floodplains, that we can, really get down to what's the best use of the money. I think that's going to take I think we're a few months away from being there. And so this was the best kind of short-term approach to use money in a quick amount of time.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, if you will, let me follow up. I would say, you've got 3 candidate projects that utilize the funding, right? If you were to just request a quick turnaround, submittal from the agencies that were funded on other projects, let's say bike trails or whatever, bridges, that kind of thing, and allow those agencies to submit, my presumption is that you're going to have the money, how should I say it? You should be able to allocate the funding. It's just how maybe the crux of the difficulty is how to do that, whether it's like a proportion or whatever. So.
Jim, anything else before I moved? It looks like Carl left before I moved to Maddie.
Oh.
Okay, thanks, Maddie.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I mean, mine is actually kind of a follow-up to Jim's, or just maybe a clarifying question. So Jim, what you are suggesting is that of already selected projects, Met Council could apply this protect money to those resiliency elements, which would in turn free up some of the STP money to fund additional projects or to move to another year? Like, is that what you're suggesting, is kind of using this protect money to kind of fill in elements and free up some of those other funds?
Yeah. Mr. Chair, Maddie, I guess, I'm not really sure about that, but I mean, I know we overprogram, we've got some other, needs out there. So I would guess I would rely on staff to, maybe think about the best way to utilize some of that funding.
All right, so Jim, so you're saying selected projects from 2022 take on more money than they were awarded? So you're saying taking on more money, not just a substitute, take the protect money and then free up the other money for a future solicitation, right? Maddie, is that your question?
Correct. Yeah, that was the clarification I was looking for.
Yeah, so I don't know, I guess maybe staff, I mean, is that even possible to, if the agency asks for a certain amount of federal money, then we're going back and asking them again? I don't know that we've ever done that. This is unique, but I guess a question for staff.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I think Jim has a good idea. Again, time's the limitation here. We're rushing the next solicitation because we need more time for the reevaluation. So you might end up in the same place as we are right here with more work involved. But I'm not saying it's a bad idea. That couldn't, even be thought of for the next solicitation or something too, for the 28 and 29 money.
Okay.
Explore more.
Yep, understood. All right, Cole?
Just curious, Steve, if we had talked at all about, rather than rushing this process, any kind of transfer to another program, another federal program like a carbon reduction, or I don't know what other programs the group would be interested in. But it seems like in some ways, we're essentially saying, let's fund some projects that we would have otherwise funded with STP. Just curious if we talked at all about transferring some of these funds to areas where we had a truly identified need in our current structure, which didn't really highlight needs for Protect as a short-term solution.
Let me. So did we look at? I just might need to clarify the question. Did we look at other kind of avenues to use the money? Is that what your question is?
Yeah, statewide, they can flex 50% of this funds to other federal programs. So I'm assuming we're well below the 50% statewide. So just curious if we had any conversations about MnDOT's openness to that.
Brian, are you on the line here? Shackleton?
I am. Tell me more about that, Cole, because I am sorry, just being with my background at Hennepin County, I could speak to certain things there, but tell me more about what the carbon reduction is doing and how they're shifting.
Well, not so much carbon reduction. I just mean that most of these federal programs, and Protect included, you can flex the funds to other programs like STP, CMAQ, carbon reduction. There's probably a whole host of different programs we could flex it to. Up to 50%, I think, for Protect is my understanding.
The one challenge is the key purpose for Protect is to make transportation assets resilient to current and future weather events and natural disasters, and so that is one of the limiting factors about flexing them to other projects. If there are elements where a project is designed to manage stormwater, or say ice in the winter, or something of that type, that would be an eligible use of the funds. I'll be honest, other ATPs around the state are kind of grappling with these same challenges because they have their plans in play, and so they've had to both look at their plans and look at other projects that haven't been approved in their plans that are failing to manage stormwaters, or are just failing hard stop, but haven't risen from a cost perspective to be included in CIPs, or capital improvement plans. And so I may go a little beyond what you're asking, Cole, but.
Well, maybe my comment is for a future thought. When we get these new programs and we try to shoehorn them into our existing process, we don't ever really explore the idea of just transferring Protect funds to, say, carbon reduction, or to, say, STP, which is allowable. So it seems like we often try to do this where we fit in things based on our existing structure. And I hear a little bit that people want to push this off potentially, and it requires us to create a whole new program to evaluate these types of projects, which is a limitation that Steve is speaking to. We don't really have time to do that. So, acknowledging that we have eligible projects that could use other sources of federal funds, and we have the ability to flex some of these funds to those, seems like an opportunity we might be missing here. I would also just note, we don't generally make environmental or planning eligible in the solicitation, and that is eligible here too. And I'm guessing there's a lot of projects that could do planning around resilience that we haven't made eligible through the regional solicitation. So just a few more restrictions that we put on ourselves here in this region that aren't helpful in this situation.
I will say, I think that's one of the things that Steve and I have grappled with, is just that the regional solicitation hasn't taken resiliency into consideration. And so the kind of identifying the actual vulnerabilities, let alone, application categories are fine, but do the project elements actually respond to a climate vulnerability? And that's a challenge that MnDOT districts are facing as well, because we've never been as explicit about that and identifying vulnerabilities from a climate perspective. And so starting fresh is challenging, and I appreciate what you're all trying to balance.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. Mr. Chair, maybe if I can just add on too, we did something similar with carbon reduction. We've got this tanker ship that's tough to steer called the Regional Solicitation, and we tried to just use the process available that people had agreed to best use a new funding source. And that's exactly why, starting in August, when we have this regional solicitation evaluation starting, we will have a subgroup specifically on protect and what the best, we've got great ideas already today. But we will have a subgroup specifically on how should we best use protect? How do you set it up? Is it a special category? Is it add-ons to projects like Jim had talked about? But that is in our near future. We'll have time and money set aside to do the work that I'm hearing today that people want to do.
All right, Cole, do you have anything else?
One other thing I mentioned that came out of a TPP workshop we had this morning was the idea of identifying like a critical resilient network might be a planning effort that we should work on. And I don't know if that's part of what you were talking about, Steve, statewide, but I'm guessing it wouldn't be super specific in the metro area anyways. So just another thing to add to your list of planning that we might need to do to respond to this funding. But I thought it was a good idea. It came from, I think, Hennepin County.
Yeah, good idea. What Brian and his team are doing, they're hiring a consultant for a statewide resiliency plan. And Brian, I assume that's kind of to be done maybe next spring, early next year. And by doing so, well, I'll let you say what it does for the federal share. I'll let you explain it.
We actually had our kickoff meeting this week, and the goal is to be finished by January of 2024, and the intent is to outline the different vulnerabilities along our right of way, looking at our STIP, and identifying segments of our roadways and right of ways on the STIP that are vulnerable to different climate hazards. So we'd have that in hand by January. By developing a resilience improvement plan and submitting it to the FHWA, we automatically get a 7% reduction in our non-federal cost share. So we'll save money by developing this, and also it'll map out both our vulnerabilities, but also responses that'll be appropriate to those vulnerabilities.
And Brian, in reading the guidance too, regions and MPOs can do resiliency plans, right? And get some of those same advantages if they want to kind of follow up your plan with a regional plan.
That's right. And I'm not sure if the work that was funded through, or that should be funded through the legislature, would meet that need, or if that's something that you all would lead, or happy to partner however.
Thanks.
And just note that planning like that would be eligible use of protect. I think, Steve, you can probably speak to the fact we don't really have staff to lead a type of project like that right now, but it's certainly something we could use this funding for.
Well, we're actually putting restrictions on that, in the sense that we're managing the planning funds at the statewide level, so that we can maximize the statewide benefit to those planning funds. And so the first planning document out of the chute is going to be this resilience improvement plan. The second one is going to be an extreme flood vulnerability assessment of our right of ways. We've started internally developing that work, and we'll take it statewide once we've completed the resilience plan.
Thank you, Brian and Cole. Any further discussion on this item? Maddie?
Yeah, thanks. So just to circle back, I mean, we've had a lot of different discussions, but are our two options at the end of these discussions still, are we going to fund, I guess now these two projects using the protect money, which could fund one and partially fund another, and or do we use the protect money and the additional STP, the 3 million STP to fully fund both projects? Or are we now introducing other options where this money is being reallocated elsewhere? It sounds like we don't have the timing, like we don't have the timeline to be able to support that from what I'm hearing.
Yeah, Steve, did you ask the applicants if they could just take the protect money and not get full funding of their ask? You know, they weren't selected projects. So I guess instead of adding 2.5 million from the STP, you know, just maximizing the allocation for protect and splitting it on a percentage basis between the two proposals based on their ask.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chair. I did not ask that question of the applicants. You know, both of the projects shown here are bringing significant overmatch of local dollars to the table. So that's, you know, one consideration, that they're bringing several $1 million each beyond what the match is required. But I guess we have them both here. So, but I didn't ask them ahead of time. No, they can speak for themselves, I guess, if that'd be an option for them.
Okay, I'm just throwing that out there because if some people aren't comfortable with moving option 2, maybe that's a way to become more comfortable with it. But Maddie, I see your hand is up.
Yeah, I have a question related to that I came to this meeting with. So let's say we do move forward in only using the protect money. So we use the 14.5 million and we fund one of these projects and partially fund the other. The math actually works out really well that they're both like $2.7 million. One of the two projects would be $2.7 million short. If we proceed in that way, if additional STP funding becomes available because, say, a project drops out or something happens, can that gap be filled? Or by like accepting protect money, we're like taking ourselves out of the pool of, or out of the list of, hey, these projects are next in line if something were to drop out?
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chair and Maddie. So you're not taking your, if other money became available, like another project dropped out and we did not have over programming, the last option on the list is to hand it out to existing projects that could take additional money. So you're not, you wouldn't be out on that opportunity if that did take place. And that's part of the reason we want to bring up that surplus of the $3.7 million, because we didn't want that to be like next month and then people are like, well, wait a second, we didn't know we had extra money that we could even consider here. And so for full disclosure, that's why we wanted to bring up that surplus of 3.7 million of STP. But to answer your question, there might be you'd still be in the running for other money as it became available to the region.
Okay, so it looks, from what I'm hearing, we have two really good projects that qualify for protect. Administratively, pretty straightforward, maximizing those funds on two projects. I know there's a lot of different perspectives, but hopefully today we can come to some consensus, maybe not, on a direction to move here. I'm just the moderator. I'm not making any motions.
Mr. Chair, this is Scott Merrick, Ramsey County.
Yeah.
I will make a motion that we apply the protect money to the Washington County and Carver County projects as shown, and also include the 3.7 million of Trunk Highway 252 money to those projects in a way that staff would recommend to us.
Okay, so basically option 2 with the exception of the Hennepin County project recommendation.
Correct, and that is because it's my understanding that Hennepin County is not wanting to be considered for the protect money.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, this is Robert Ellis. I'll second that motion.
Okay. Merrick motions, Ellis seconds.
Chair, this is Jason.
Further discussion. Jason?
Chair, Hennepin County does not have any concerns with the motion proposed.
Thank you, Jason. Steve?
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chair. Just one clarifying question on the motion here. In this instance, I think roughly 2.5 million of the SDP would be used on those two projects, and the remainder 1.2 million would be pushed to the next solicitation. So it'd be a mix of pushing to the next solicitation and using on these two requests.
Okay, yeah, and that's what I gathered from the motion was to
Okay,
sure
gotcha.
all the project requests eligible, all the eligible costs were met. So 10 million for the strategic capacity and 7 million for roadway. Then the rest filled in, as you mentioned, the 2.5. So, Scott, does that sound correct? I mean, that was your intent.
Yes, that was my intent. Thank you.
Good.
All right. So we have a motion and a second. Cole, you got another comment?
I just had a question. I don't know if you have this, Steve, but the 4 252 projects were a mix of different project types, but it didn't state the solicitation category that each of them applied in. Do you know offhand, are they a mix of reconstruction, strategic capacity, pedestrian? Is it kind of all over the board?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair and members. So 3 of the 4 projects were strategic capacity, and 1 was a multi-use trail project.
Cole, does that answer your question?
Yeah, and I don't know if you specifically, I'm assuming that we're kind of combining them all and saying the funds shift, so we're not necessarily saying the multi-use trails has to stay in that category. But that would traditionally be the approach if we wanted to do that. It's probably too small of an amount in the total to get into that level of detail, but just wanted to clarify that.
Okay, thank you. All right, so we do have a motion and a second on the table. Last time I'll ask for further discussion. All right, seeing none, we'll go to a roll call vote. Bradley?
Thank you, Chair. Anoka County, Jerry OJ.
Aye.
Carver County, Darren Milkey.
Aye.
Hennepin County, Jason Piper.
Aye.
Ramsey County, Scott Merrick.
Aye.
Scott County, Adam Jessen.
Aye.
Washington County, Maddie Dahlheimer.
Aye.
TAB Coordinator, Elaine Kotsukos.
Aye.
Met Council MTS, Cole Henniker.
Aye.
Metro Transit, Scott Janowiak.
Aye.
MnDOT Metro District, Aaron Tagg.
Aye.
MnDOT State Aid, Colleen Brown.
Aye.
DNR, Nancy Spooner Walsh.
Aye.
Suburban Transit, Heidi Scholl.
Aye.
You. Lakeville, Paul Omi.
Aye.
Eden Prairie, Robert Ellis.
Aye.
Ridley, Jim Kozlucher.
Aye.
Maple Grove, Ken Ashfeld. Plymouth, Michael Thompson.
Aye.
Minneapolis Engineering, Katie White.
Aye.
And St. Paul Engineering, Ann Weber.
Aye.
Thank you, everyone. Chair motion passes.
All right, thank you, Bradley. All right, thank you for the great discussion on that. I know staff, you received a lot of good feedback on perhaps how some of these subcommittees can start some of the discussions on how to utilize these funds in the future. So really good discussion today. Next item is the TIP recommendation. Joe, is that you?
Yes, Chair, it is. So I've got a brief PowerPoint, and a lot of you have seen this with some frequency, though there is a new slide added that's going to tweak the motion, hopefully, and I'll get into that in a minute. Almost literally. So let's talk about the TIP. I think a lot of you have seen this, so I'm going to kind of blast through it, but the TIP is a 4-year list of transportation projects that are funded in whole or in part with federal funding, along with federally funded projects. Any project that's deemed regionally significant by a definition that's been established for several years has to be in a TIP. The TIP must include any project that's funded with transportation funds or air quality projects, which really, I just repeated myself there. And it's required for all MPOs in the country to do this. They have to do it at a minimum of every 4 years. We do it every year because that keeps the program a little bit easier to follow, and it's also in line with MnDOT's STIP. And then once the TIP is approved, we incorporate it for into the STIP. So here's our schedule. TAB released it for public comment yesterday, and they did it with a small tweak that you'll see in a minute. And our public review period goes until July 3rd, and then the recommendation schedule is pretty close to what you've seen in the past. So what you're doing today is approving it, or recommending approval of what you see here, although there could be public comments that could tweak it. So here is a summary. It's a little bigger than usual, and that's probably, usually we're in the upper 5 point something billions. And I think that's because of some of the new sources that we've had through IIJA. Proportionally, it breaks down pretty similar to federal highway and federal transit, each taking just shy of 50% of the funding, are contributing just shy of 50% of the funding with property tax and state taxes. And then of course, trunk highway funds from the state of Minnesota. And then, you know, in years past, we used to talk a bit about.
Hey, Joe, we can't see your presentation currently.
Wow. I skipped that step. I apologize. Sorry about that. You don't need to see all of this, but you probably, so this was the summary I was talking about when we were breaking it down by mode and by funding source. So again, federal funding and federal highway and federal transit make up the lion's share, as do those modes in red and blue here. And these numbers are a little bigger than we're used to, at probably by about a half to 3/4 billion bigger than most TIPs have been, but the proportionate breakdown on both of these both sides of the slide is roughly the same. Oops. So you might remember in years past that we had a presentation from transit, but really all I'm going to do here is tell you a bit about what is in the TIP for transit, and then Aaron Tagg from MnDOT is going to talk a little bit about MnDOT's contribution to the TIP. So in the TIP is from transit perspectives, any project that is funded with federal formula funds, and of course our CMAQ funded projects, and then anything regionally significant, which would always get federal funds anyway. Federal Transit Administration and DOT competitive awards that are awarded to the council and to others. There are some MnDOT sponsored projects, for example, small transit projects in the TIP. and any FTA new starts and small starts projects. So there are no locally only funded projects in the TIP from transit. And finally, I'm going to talk a bit about the motion. Your motion is in black here is what is shown on the application. But what happened in recent weeks is that there was a small carbon reduction program award in the small portion of MnDOT District 3 known as 7W that is part of our MPO area. So they've determined that City of St. Michael for a multi-use trail project will be being awarded that funding, and we have some of the information on that project below. So what staff is hoping is that you'll recommend, it shouldn't be released for public comment, but that you recommend that TAC recommend adoption of the TIP with the addition of the project and text in red. And that's really all I have. And so when we get back from Aaron's presentation, I might put this back up so we can look at the proposed motion. That's all I have, but I'm going to prop up Aaron's presentation so he can talk to you a bit about MnDOT contribution to the TIP. If I can ever figure out my computer.
I can get started while you get that up, Joe.
Yeah, it's loading very slowly for some reason.
Members and chair, good afternoon. So I'll try and give you a quick kind of, I don't know, update recap of the MnDOT portion of the ATIP. You can go to the first slide there. So this is what is the Metro District for MnDOT. So the ATIP goes into the STIP, which covers the 24 through 27 years. We are also working on our CHIP, which covers 28 through 33. And so that takes us out to our 10-year program. Next slide. So as you can see here, that's kind of breaks it down. We have the STIP, which is years 1 through 4. We have the CHIP, which is years 5 through 10. We have our MnChip guidance, which is looking out kind of in that couple decade time frame, which is guided by our SMTP. And so that's what we're covering today. And today I'm just going to try and do a quick overview of what is in those STIP years of 1 through 4. Next slide. Next. Okay. So fiscal year 24, which starts really in just about a month and a half now. So it starts in July of 2023. Number of highlighted projects here. If you see a project that you're really excited about, not on the list, don't worry. It is probably in the STIP. I was just trying to pick out some of the bigger or more significant projects that we have, since we have a lot in there. So we have some number of pavement projects on Highway 65, Highway 55 in Hennepin County, some work on 212 out in Carver County. We have a resurfacing project of Highway 36 in the Roseville area, and then a couple of projects in Scott County on Highway 169. Go to 25. 25. One thing we start seeing in 25 is we got a fair amount of IIJ bridge money, and in the 25 timeframe we started seeing some movement of those bridge projects closer up in the program to take advantage of those funds. So one is the I-394 rehab of the Dunwoody Bridge, which is just west of downtown Minneapolis. The Dunwoody Bridge is actually, from what I hear, the second largest bridge in the state by surface area. And so there's some rehab work on that, as well as a number of bridges. You can see 25 different bridges around there, or again, some sort of rehab work. Another bridge that moved up is the Dartmouth Bridge, which is the 94 bridge over the Mississippi River in Minneapolis. And so that is getting some rehab work as well. Also have some work on Highway 3 and a reconstruct of Highway 97. It's outside of the Met Council area, but is within the MnDOT Metro District. Next slide. 26. Some work on 77, both in Dakota and Hennepin County. The second one on there, this is another IIJ bridge project that moved up. Some work on the bridges around the Mall of America. We have a big project on Highway 12, a 2-year project. You'll notice in the draft that we have money in this year as well as money in 27 for this project. A big project on Highway 280. And then we have the start of the replacement of the University and Fourth Bridges over 35W. This is another project that moved up with IIJA money. And one thing I want to note is just because this is showing what fiscal year they're going to be let in, and doesn't necessarily mean this is the year of construction. So for example, the 35W bridges at University and Fourth, those are in fiscal year 26, but those won't be constructed until 27. And then go to the last year. So this is the new year for the STIP. So most of these projects are new. So we have some work on Highway 100 north of 394, a couple projects on 61, one in Ramsey County, one in Dakota County, some major work on Highway 62, and then some work on Highway 101 in kind of the northwestern part of Hennepin County. So that's just kind of a brief overview of what's in the program right now. You know, issues, risks, opportunities. Really, it feels like right now there's a lot of opportunities going around, but we have the program is always changing. You know, we'll see what comes out of this legislative session that is hopefully over here in the next few days, and we'll find out what additional funding comes out of that. And then also, you know, there's lots of grants out there that both MnDOT and our partners are going after, whether they're state or federal grants or programs, and those are kind of, you know, helping to supplement the program we already have, but a lot of shifting that sometimes has to happen as we get notices about those awards. So lots of opportunity, although as we kind of discussed today, you know, it's always a challenge to try and figure out how to bring new money into the program, especially in those early years of the STIP. Challenging to you know, unless you already have a project that's under development, to develop those new projects so quickly. That's all I had. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Aaron. Joe, did you have anything else? You're on mute, Joe.
Nope, nothing else, Mr. Chair. I'm putting the proposed motion from staff up as a reminder.
Okay. Any discussion on this item? Not seeing any hands up.
Mr. Chair, this is Cole.
Yeah.
Joe, I'm just curious, or Steve, if we legislature passes funding and projects start getting identified for next year, do we anticipate that as a TIP amendment sometime next year? Or do you guys know when the timing of new projects might move forward for the TIP?
Cole, Mr. Chair, I believe that would be dependent on what program year the project would be for. And I'll admit I'm not particularly in tune to what the legislature might be doing. So they would be added to the TIP if there were any 2024 projects. We would certainly have to do that, and possibly 2025 projects, depending on timing of their potential letting.
And you're saying, Joe, maybe we would do that as part of the approval down the road.
Depends on timing. So if they needed to be amended into the tip mid-year, then we would have to have an amendment. Otherwise, they would probably be rolled into the next tip as part of as part of this process.
Thank you.
Right, any other discussion? All right, seeing none, we'll need a motion in a second.
Mr. Chair, this is Robert. I'll make a motion to recommend adoption of the 24 through 27 tip.
All right, thank you, Robert. Ellis moves. Do we have a second?
Mr. Chair, this is Paul, only Lakeville. I would second that.
Mr. Chair, can we clarify whether that would include the red part of the motion? Shown on the
Yes.
screen?
Yeah. Sounds like Robert confirmed that the motion is the one that you're showing up there, Joe. All right, so we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll vote by roll call. Bradley?
Thank you, Chair. Jerry OJ, Anoka County.
Aye.
Carver County, Darren Milkey.
Aye.
Hennepin County, Jason Piper.
Aye.
Ramsey County, Scott Merritt.
Aye.
Scott County, Adam Jessen.
Aye.
Washington County, Maddie Dahlheimer.
Aye.
TAB Coordinator, Elaine Kutsukos.
Aye.
Met Council MTS, Cole Hineker.
Aye.
Metro Transit, Scott Janowiak.
Aye.
MnDOT Metro District, Aaron Tagg.
Aye.
MnDOT State Aid, Colleen Brown.
Aye.
DNR, Nancy Spooner Walsh.
Aye.
Suburban Transit, Heidi Scholl.
Sorry, aye.
Worries. Lakeville, Paul Omi.
Aye.
Eden Prairie, Robert Ellis.
Aye.
Ridley, Jim Kozluchar.
Aye.
Maple Grove, Ken Ashfeld.
Aye.
Plymouth, Michael Thompson.
Aye.
Minneapolis Engineering, Katie White.
Aye.
And St. Paul Engineering, Ann Weber.
Aye.
Chair, motion passes.
All right, thank you. Next item is any informational items from our members that they'd like to share. Right. None. Next item is other business. Do we have any other business? Staff? I assume not.
Not on the agenda.
Right.
Mr. Chair?
Yeah.
I just got a quick question. Now that TAB and TAC are back meeting in person, is there any discussion about funding a program in person again?
Great question, Paul. So the TAC chair, Jenny Hager, I think her preference is to hold in-person meetings as needed on maybe some critical items that came up. So we actually held our TAC meeting here at the beginning of the month. So that was the first time we've gotten together in a while. So there is no set protocol exactly how we want to do it. But yeah, that can certainly be a discussion for this group. So maybe what I would tell you is think about maybe if we want to get together once or twice a year or get on a regular schedule. You know, I think these work pretty efficiently how we have them, but I'm certainly open to getting the group together. I think that would be a good idea from time to time. So maybe something to think about. And Bradley, maybe we could put that on the agenda for our next meeting to discuss here as a group. Yeah, thank you, Paul, for bringing that up. Anything else on that, Paul?
Oh, that's it. Thanks.
All right. Joe?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I was just going to add that I'll be sending a survey to TAC members soon to get their a sense of what some of their preferences are regarding to meeting in person or not meeting in person, or how, things like frequency or how much notice there should be and things like that. So TAC will have a little bit more direction in the near future. Right now, as you kind of pointed out, I think the plan is to primarily meet remotely, but that some frequency or infrequency of in-person meetings would occur.
Yeah, Joe, is there any way you could just send that same survey to our members?
Sure.
Okay. Cole?
Yeah, I was just wondering, between Joe and Bradley, a lot of our work is obviously the tip, which kind of varies based on need, but the solicitation's our other big piece of work. Do you have, through the selection process next spring, a list of like topics by funding and programming meeting for roughly the next 9 months that you could bring to a future discussion, so we know, like, when are we talking about appeals and et cetera, and we could maybe pick one meeting that we think actually might have some value for being in person for.
I'd have to look through for that information. Joe, feel free to pipe.
Mr. Chair and Cole, yeah, we could, between us and Elaine, who kind of knows the schedule for the solicitation, we could probably come up with something. The tip is very standard. Solicitation moves around a bit, but we could probably come up with, I don't want to say how long, but the next year or so.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea, Cole, to understand maybe some of those critical meeting dates where it would be good to get together face to face. Obviously this group doesn't need to meet just to talk about a few scope change requests, etc. But I think a combination of maybe a survey just to see where people are at, and then also looking out at the schedule, maybe that could inform our discussion at our next meeting, or we could put it on the agenda whenever we get those results, Joe. That sounds like a plan.
Yeah, I would just ask, Mr. Chair, that we don't like decide it, the meeting before we're going to meet in person. Give people a few months notice if they can adjust their schedules accordingly if we start doing that change.
Oh, no, I agree, because I have meetings back to back virtually. So yeah, I mean, it takes a lot more planning now to get around and actually count time for driving and whatnot. So I agree, we do need a plan ahead. So, all right. It being just after 3 o'clock, thank you everybody for your time today. Very productive meeting, and we'll go ahead and adjourn the meeting. Thank you.
Thanks.